Chapter 4. Attacking a Strong Point. Attacking a strong point is often similar to conducting a raid, and many of the same tactical considerations and techniques apply. Attackers quickly abandon their objective after a successful raid, while there is usually an intent to hold a captured strong point for some period of time. Therefore, an attack on a strong point generally involves more supplies and heavier armaments. Most often, the strong points were political centers which the Mujahideen wanted to hold for propaganda value. Vignette 1. Taking Alangar district capital by Nawaz Khan, Dr. Abul Qudus Al-Khuzai, and Haji M. Siddiqallah. In July of 1980, the sub-district capital of Nengrach was co-located with the Alangar district capital in the town of Alangar. This is because the Mujahideen had driven the government out of the mountain redoubt of Nengrach. The district government of Nuristan was also there. This was a common practice. The DRA maintained many governments in exile for areas they did not control and held nationwide congresses using emigrants to represent those uncontrolled areas. The DRA never controlled more than 15% of the countryside. We decided to eliminate all these governments by seizing Mingar town. It proved to be a major victory. The DRA 81st Regiment had a battalion in Mingar, and there were some DRA militia forces as well. Map 4-1, Mingar 2. We had two contacts in the DRA garrison. One was Captain Yar Mohammed, who had a brother in our Mujahideen group. Captain Mohammed was from nearby Koi Safi and routinely provided us information about government plans. We talked to the captain about capturing Mingar, and he agreed to help us. We introduced the captain to our other contact, Piroz. Piroz was a cook in the DRA garrison. We gave drugs to Piroz. The captain and Piroz agreed that Piroz would drug the food before our attack, and that the captain would signal us when that was done, and we could launch our attack. We asked the cook how many Mujahideen we should bring. Not too many to cause trouble, but not too few to fail, he replied. Okay, about 70,000, we joked. No, only about 10,000, he joked back. In any case, the Mujahideen sympathizers in the DRA camp would kill the communist officers. The signal to attack was the firing of a magazine full of tracer ammunition. There were about 300 total Mujahideen formed in 4 groups and about 30 subgroups. We called the group commanders together and told them to concentrate their men at night in Toki Kwar, about 1 kilometer from the district headquarters. We told them that we had inside contacts but provided no details. We also assigned a group of mullahs with megaphones to begin broadcasting after the attack. They were to persuade the besieged DRA to surrender. H hour was midnight. There were 150 Mujahideen in Nawaz Khan's group. They were armed with 3 Dishka heavy machine guns, 2 82mm recoilless rifles, some mortars, and Kalashnikov rifles. Dr. Kudu's group had 1 Soviet PPSH machine gun, some bolt-action rifles, and some other weapons. Several Mujahideen were unarmed. The other Mujahideen groups were similarly equipped. The signal to attack was given 10 minutes early. The tracers ripped into the air. Although the drugged food did not have its desired effect, Piroz and 10 other Mujahideen sympathizers had killed their communist officers. The DRA battalion surrendered to us as we stormed inside the battalion compound. The first one in was Dr. Nassar, who just this year finished his education in Egypt. It was the 1st of July 1980. The Mujahideen had deployed forces to the north, south, and west of the district center. One group attacked the DRA security posts on Bagal Mountain to the northwest. One group attacked along the main road which ran east of the river. One group attacked to seize and cross the bridge. One group attacked the DRA posts on the Amir Shahid Hill to the southeast. The DRA military did not want to fight us, however, the local militia units were reluctant to surrender and fought on. The militia were still protecting the government enclaves of Alangar, Nuristan, and Nengrach. The military then cooperated with us and turned their guns on the militia. A fierce battle ensued with the Mujahideen and military fighting the militia. During the fighting, the district governor of Alangar and 8 or 9 aides managed to escape to Maitar-Lam. Still, we captured Alangar and eliminated the DRA governments of Nengrach and Alangar. 13 officials from Nuristan made a break, but were cut down in our crossfire. The governor of Nuristan was killed by a Mujahideen whose brother had been killed by the same governor. At one point, Sidi Kula saw Sadagul, the Alangar Communist Party secretary, being dragged off by a group he did not recognize. Since he had lent his rifle to a friend, Sidi Kula was unarmed, and so he struck 2 stones together to imitate a bolt-action rifle and challenge them. Malawi Rahim identified himself and stated that they had captured a DRA soldier. Sidi Kula identified Sadagul and told them that they had a much more important catch. The fighting continued through the night, the Mujahideen moving to cut off the fleeing DRA officials and pursuing them in the dark. The fighting ended in time for morning prayers. One of the groups involved in the fighting was a group of teenagers from 13 to 18 years old who we called the Kandakiano Bull Terriers group. During the fighting, one 14-year-old was fighting a desperate hand-to-hand combat with a DRA sports captain named Sharif. Fortunately, another Mujahideen killed Sharif during the fight. We killed 285 DRA officials, police, soldiers, militia, and civilians. We captured 80 heavy weapons, 2 armored vehicles, and 1,200 small arms. The heavy weapons included one 76mm mountain gun, one 76mm field gun, some ZGU-1 heavy machine guns, a 107mm mortar, several DSHK heavy machine guns, and some 82mm mortars. Many government people also surrendered to us. It was a bonanza. In Nawaz Khan's group, they lost 3 KIA and 7 WIA. In Sidi Kula's group, they lost 2 KIA. We kept the district capital for some time until a joint Soviet DRA force pushed us out and reestablished DRA government in Alangar. Commentary. Alangar is about 30 kilometers from the province capital of Maitar-Lam. At this point of the war, the Mujahideen were determined to control political centers so that they could claim to be legitimate government in Afghanistan. The DRA was equally determined to prevent this. Vignette 2. The Battle for Panjwai, based on an interview with Mullah Malang. In September 1982, the DRA, backed by Soviet forces, had firm control of Panjwai, the district capital of Panjwai District, map 4-2 Panjwai. Panjwai is located some 25 kilometers southwest of Kandahar. The district was militarily significant to both sides since the town and its surrounding hills provided a favorable base for military action in the green zones which stretch all the way to the city of Kandahar. This area was also the hotbed of resistance in the region. Seizing control of Panjwai was in the interest of all the local Mujahideen groups based in the area. Therefore, about 1,000 Mujahideen assembled near Panjwai to take the town. The operation was directed by HIK commander Mullah Malang and others. The town was defended by up to 300 militia who lived there with their families. The militiamen had turned their houses and all other buildings into fortified positions. They placed bunkers on the rooftops and occupied and fortified the high ground overlooking the town and the approaches to it. The Mujahideen began by surrounding the town and shelling it for 2 days. The shelling had little effect on the defenders, but the Mujahideen soon found themselves the object of enemy artillery fire and aerial bombardment. Most of the Mujahideen withdrew into the neighboring villages of Spurwan and Zangabad. On the 3rd day, Commander Mullah Malang decided to penetrate the town with a small group and to seize control of a number of the dominant positions that covered the approaches to the town. At noon, Mullah Malang led a group of 25 Mujahideen to the southern edge of the town. They carried picks and shovels. They quietly dug a hole through the adobe wall and broke into a house. Once inside, they began to advance from house to house by knocking holes into the walls. Their advance was totally unobservable by the militia who were occupying the rooftop positions overlooking the streets of the town. The Mujahideen finally knocked a hole through a wall that opened into a courtyard. They burst into the courtyard with weapons at the ready. The militiamen were caught by surprise. They assumed that the town was already captured by the Mujahideen and fled from the town. Mullah Malong's group established a secure area and signaled the Mujahideen outside the town. Soon, hundreds of other Mujahideen poured into the town and cleared it from the southeast to the northwest, ending on the bank of the Arghandab River. They cleared the town building by building, again avoiding the streets by advancing by knocking holes in the walls. Other Mujahideen immediately climbed to the rooftops and manned the abandoned positions. Only the district headquarters remained under militia control. That night, the Mujahideen consolidated their gains and captured the district headquarters the next day. The militia had suffered heavy casualties and retreated to the overwatching high ground of a neighboring hill. The Mujahideen surrounded the militia positions. The government forces then opened negotiations with the Mujahideen, apparently to gain time. As they were talking, an armored Soviet DRA column arrived from Kandahar. The Mujahideen withdrew inside Panjwai. The following night, the Soviet and DRA forces attacked Panjwai, and a heavy house-to-house battle ensued. The Mujahideen fired from the rooftops at the government forces advancing along the streets. Eventually, the Soviet DRA combat power made the Mujahideen position untenable. The Mujahideen withdrew in small groups under the cover of darkness. The regime restored the district government in Panjwai. Commentary. The Mujahideen gradually learned that overrunning and seizing control of government administrative centers is easy, but retaining them usually resulted in rapid Soviet or DRA retaliation. The Soviet DRA felt that they had to retain control of local government agencies and would go to great lengths and take high risks to defend local administrative centers, even when they were tightly besieged by the resistance. Control of a district center symbolized control of the district, though this was seldom the case. In some remote districts, government control was restricted to a few buildings in the center of the district town. The government spared no effort to maintain their presence in these remote district centers despite their insignificant military usefulness and the high costs, in men and material, of holding them. This policy was promoted by the political importance of maintaining control, albeit nominal, over all provinces, districts, and sub-districts in a country which was in revolt against the foreign installed government. The Battle of Panjwai is an example of how easily the resistance could seize control of an isolated district center and how vulnerable the resistance became once it was forced to defend the town in the face of overwhelming Soviet DRA forces. For this reason, it was only toward the end of the Soviet occupation that the Mujahideen again moved to seize control of major district and provincial centers. The source of the resistance power was not the cities and towns, but the rural areas and the hundreds of cross-border supply and infiltration routes which they controlled throughout the war. Tactically, a 25-man detachment accomplished what a 1,000-man force could not. They did this through surprise and the indirect approach. However, the lack of an overall operational command left the Mujahideen vulnerable. After seizing Panjwai, the Mujahideen became overconfident and failed to prepare for the enemy counterattack. They confidently parleyed with the militia while the Soviet DRA force formed and moved. The Mujahideen failed to consolidate their victory and to establish defensive positions on the hills to the east and west of Panjwai and on the Arghandab River to the north. They failed to post reconnaissance and ambush forces on the likely enemy avenues of approach. Instead of having to fight their way through a series of ambushes and then bumping into outlying Mujahideen fortified positions, the Soviet DRA relief force moved unopposed to the battlefield and surprised the victorious Mujahideen at Panjwai. Tactically, the Mujahideen realized that movement along streets is suicidal in urban combat. However, the spontaneous nature of the unpaid volunteer Mujahideen made control very difficult. Mujahideen forces joined the battle and left as they wished. Often they did not bother to let the coordinating commander know.